Hello, Decide Your Destiny crew, the Decide Your Destiny family and the community. So great to have you tuning in once again for another brilliant podcast episode where I've got an amazing guest sitting opposite me, someone who I think really resonates with the message in this community and can really share a lot of insights and things that we can implement to further decide our own destiny and take charge of our lives. So really excited to announce Lisa Evans as my guest for today. She is the director of Speaking Savvy, and she's a public speaking and business storytelling coach and trainer. And more than that, she pulls on her long history of being a midwife and all the things that she's had to manage in that world, and she combines that with her own flavor of coaching and training. So yeah, I'm really excited. Lisa, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Kyle. I'm super excited, and thank you for that lovely introduction.
No worries, no worries. Thank you for coming down. So I guess let's start with, your career as a midwife, because, we've spoken before, and, for the listeners, Lisa and I have known each other for about a year now. We've been getting to know each other a bit more, but we definitely had that sort of connection. I think we have that similarity of that calmness, that kind of intuition that's inbuilt. And I think a lot of our history or time spent in maybe hospital areas has me as the patient, you as helping out the patient. But yeah, I guess I'd love to learn a little bit more about your time as a midwife.
Yeah. So ever since I was little, I always knew that I wanted to be a nurse. I used to bandage my dolls, and I'm from London, and we actually there was a doll hospital where you could actually take your teddies and your dolls to be repaired. This was in the day where teddies were jointed and dolls were jointed. Wow. So sometimes their arms and legs or their heads would fall off. And Mum would take me on the bus to the doll hospital, yep, and the dolls would get repaired. Yep. And I remember one day the nurse at the doll hospital, she handed me the doll after she'd bandaged its head back on and she said, "Now Lisa, you take the doll back home and you take really good care of her." And it was at that moment that I was like, wow, this person obviously wasn't a real nurse, yeah. But she was in charge of the doll hospital, and I just I felt so grown up that she'd given me this really responsible thing to do, to look after this doll so that her head would heal and she would become my favourite doll again. And I did. I went home and I nursed her, and that was really the seed that was planted. I was probably around 6 or 7, and I started my nursing career as soon as I could. So I was about 17 3/4, had to wait. And then I began my training. So initially it's 3 years to be a general nurse, and then an extra almost 2 years to become a midwife. The training's changed a little bit now. You don't have to be a nurse to be a midwife. But back then when I did my training many years ago, that was the pathway that you did. So then I was a registered midwife, and then I specialised and I did some further training of around a year, and I became a neonatal intensive care midwife. So looking after prem babies born early on life support. Wow. Very challenging, high-tech area of nursing, but I really just took to it. And I kind of liked that fast pace, and I liked the intensity of it, the adrenaline and the sort of excitement, very rewarding. So I'd really found my calling early, quite early in my life. I'd done all my training. By the time I was 23, I was pretty much finished all my training, and that was the job that I thought that I'd be doing for the rest of my life, really.
Wow, that's amazing. It's like, you were given this gift, this opportunity. Okay, we need you to look after this doll. And it was kind of like, you're passing the baton over to me, and this expectation. It's like, okay, so I've got to transform in a way. I've got to learn. I've got to make sure I change my habits. I really look after this doll to make sure it's it's healthy. And so no wonder you kind of, when you went to the next stage of what you wanted to be as a midwife in that fast-paced environment, of course, when that calling came, you jumped right in. So can I ask you a question? This is a question that I often get asked. Often people ask, what that reality is between what is shown visually and what is reality. So, through TV shows and maybe some medical TV shows, is it all that running around, or is there something, is there a level of calmness and stoicism sort of?
Yeah, absolutely. So the TV shows where, there's an emergency and people are racing around corridors and there's sort of blue lights and drama and it all seems a bit chaotic. It's not like that at all, because that wouldn't be safe and a practical way to get the job done. So in any emergency, whether it's adults, kids or whoever it is, the team come together. Everybody is absolutely trained and knows what their piece of the job is. Everybody comes together to get it done, and there's a manner of calmness that takes place, and everybody is really focused on their task. But of course, you've got to remain level-headed and think rationally, which can be hard initially when you've got a life in front of you, and that there is the difference between that person making it or not. And of course, in nursing and midwifery and medicine, there's also the ordinary days as well. It's not always running around saving lives.
Yes. Yeah. There's that whole perception of reality. And the story.
So after I finished all my training, I wanted to go to. I had it in my head again. I probably saw a show on TV that I wanted to go and work in the US.
Okay.
And in order to get the green card that it was back then, I don't know what it is now, I had to do an exam, and it was quite a bit of studying to do this particular exam to allow me to go into the US. So I went through a recruitment company and I got offered this position in a neonatal intensive care unit in California, pending on me getting this little piece of paper.
Yep.
And so I bought myself this sort of, I remember it was a fat yellow textbook, and I think I had about 8 weeks to be able to read and sit this exam. And then that was the ticket into California.
Wow.
And in the meantime, I saw an ad in a newspaper for a short-term contract at a Sydney hospital. So I answered that ad and I found myself in Sydney, and I had vivid images of me laying on Bondi Beach with my thick yellow textbook studying this exam to be a nurse in America, and that never happened. So Australia became my adopted country, and like many people I meet who call Australia home, often we end up here by accident. It's a trip or a holiday or a love or something that sparked your interest, and you end up, 6 months turns into a year, turns into a lifetime. So for me, it was supposed to be a 12-week trip. I had a 12-week sort of contract, and then I was meant to be going back and then ultimately moving to California. And it was one of those, those sliding doors moments where sometimes I think, I wonder how life would have been different if I had gone to California rather than in Sydney.
Yes. Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, I guess part of that is the recreation. Like you're definitely not shy of recreating yourself. And I think if you would have gone to either place, do you think you would have kind of ended up where you are in terms of your career now? So because you started your new business at the age of 50, so you've come through that history of being a midwife, of I guess knowing from the age of 6, which is very early, for someone to know what they want to do, and then all that time spending and kind of coming up the ranks, and I guess it also allowing you to travel, and then now you're helping leaders in their business, and you're an incredible speaker, and sharing stories, and that's where your heart and passion is. Do you think you would have always ended up at this destination?
I don't think so. I think that these days people have portfolio careers and there's lots of opportunities and pathways.
Yep.
When I was going through school and high school, there was that expectation that you'd pick a career and you'd stick with that career and maybe have your family, come back part-time. But really in nursing, there are a couple of different streams. Once you go up the ranks, you can either move into management, you can take the research path and you can become sort of academic research, or you can go into teaching is the other one. You can become a teacher and teach nurses. So that was really sort of the career option that I thought about. And yes, I did get the opportunity to come to Australia and ultimately settled in Perth. But my defining moment was the day that I lost most of my hearing. So I didn't have any choice about leaving my career.
Wow.
I had a virus that destroyed the nerves in my vestibular system. So it caused an incredible, when the virus was at its peak, it caused an incredible dizziness. I had severe vertigo that I couldn't even lift my head up. And this tinnitus. So I had this, tinnitus takes different forms. Some people it's ringing, some people it's sort of ticking or hissing. Mine was like, did you hold a seashell up to your ear when you were a kid?
Yes.
That shh. That's what it was like, but quite intense. And that's all I could hear. I could hear this whooshing and I could hear this dull sound and this terrible tinnitus. Now, thankfully, the dizziness settled down. The tinnitus remained, and I was told that there was absolutely nothing that could be done about my hearing loss because it was nerve. It had been caused by this virus. So I had a tiny amount of sound left. And then there was the reality. So at this stage I was just about 40 that I couldn't be an neonatal intensive care midwife anymore because it wasn't safe or practical. It was too demanding, too challenging, high tech. So I then had to really think long and hard about what would I do for the rest of my career. And I didn't know the answer at that point. I didn't know the answer.
That's daunting.
I did feel sorry for myself for a little while. Sometimes we just have to allow a little bit of self-indulgence before we pick ourselves up and put the pieces together. And in those moments, the things that were going through my mind were, why did this have to happen to me? What on earth am I going to do for my career? And at that time I thought, well, I'm 40, who's even going to give me a job? So I didn't know the answers to this, but I knew that I had to do something. So when my kids were little, by this stage I've got 3 beautiful daughters and a wonderful husband. So at this stage I had started an MBA and I thought, right, I'll go back and I'll finish off the MBA. So I fast-tracked. I'd been doing it, part-time work, part-time, 1 unit here, 2 units there. So I went back and I enrolled full-time and I finished off the MBA. And then I got a job in the Department of Health, so in the Commonwealth Department of Health, Federal Public Service. And I was looking forward to sort of using my health experience but working in the public service. But unfortunately it turned out to be not healthy at all. It was a toxic workplace where there was a culture of bullying.
Oh, gosh.
And I quite naively, I was brought up, Carl, that if you see something, you say something, right?
Yes.
So early on, I'd only been there a few weeks, and I observed some behaviour towards another person by a couple of individuals that was just not okay. And so I called it. I called it, and as a result of that, I then became the target of prolonged, sustained, intensive bullying behaviour. And my world changed then. So not only was I coming to terms with significant and permanent hearing loss, I was now in this really unhealthy environment. And as a result of that, I pretty much stopped speaking out. I became really withdrawn, really isolated, and really quite low, and just couldn't make sense of, I'd walked away from my career and it was so different. So critical care nursing is all about frontline decision-making, definitely teamwork, and about getting the job done, really. And then I'd moved into the public service and I just couldn't make sense of it. I thought, how does anything even ever get done with all this red tape and these processes? And so I was trying to navigate that, and then it became this toxic workplace, which was really challenging, and that was harder to handle than any physical assault on my body. This pretty much almost destroyed me. It was really bad.
Wow.
During that time, I got invited to take part in a research trial, and I got a cochlear implant. So that was the beginning of learning to hear again and speak again. If you can't hear properly, it impacts the way that you speak. And also the cochlear implant, you have to retrain the brain to hear again using new neural pathways.
Yes.
So the artificial sound that comes in from the device comes in at a slightly different time to the natural sound that I still have, tiny amount. So my brain has to squash the two together. And so I was committed to my rehab. It was hundreds and hundreds of hours with the research team. That was one of the criteria of being selected on the trial, because there were more people that could have benefited from the device than there were places available.
Yes.
But it was a rigorous process, and one of the things that I had to do was commit to the intensive rehab. Some weeks I was at the hospital with the research team, like 4 mornings a week. Oh. And so I went through this period, and during that time, in learning to use the device, is a very slow process. First of all, when the device was turned on, it was just noise. It was indecipherable what the sounds were. And then gradually I could recognise that the sound, maybe this sounds human. And then after a few more weeks, maybe this sound is high-pitched or low-pitched. Maybe it's female, maybe it's male. And then after more hours, I could recognise a syllable, then a word and a sentence. And I learnt to hear again I went right back to beginning reader books. Did you grow up on Janet and John books? Very early, like Ladybird books, very simple language. And I got those, and I would listen to those in a very simple words, very simple, slow narration style, and I would kind of follow along with my eyes as I was listening to the words. It was an incredibly long process. And as part of that rehab, not only was I spending a lot of time listening, sounding out words, articulating words, getting used to the way that I now sounded very differently, I definitely knew that I needed to rebuild that confidence that I'd lost through working in that unhealthy environment. Yep. So I discovered public speaking, and I thought this will give me the opportunity to, get more comfortable, to get some practice in a safe space, and to also really fine-tune my listening and my speaking skills. So when I decide that I'm going to do something, I'm all out. So I got the best coaches, speakers and mentors from around the world and went on this public speaking journey. At this time, I'd moved from the toxic workplace and I'd gone across to State Health. WA Health is a wonderful employer. Yeah. So I was now in a safe space and doing some fabulous work in health, and I was speaking as a hobby.
Awesome.
And then, those birthdays that end in a zero, and sometimes on those special birthdays we do a bit of navel gazing and we wonder what's next and what's my purpose in life, and am I fulfilling my life, and what sort of legacy am I going to leave. And it was at that moment when I thought, I've been given this gift of a cochlear implant, and in losing my hearing I've discovered my voice. Ironically, it's my voice that I've discovered. Yeah. And I want to help others to discover their voice and empower others to step up and share their stories and share their messages. So I became a public speaking and storytelling coach, and pretty soon after that people started to ask me to coach them. So I then decided, okay, well, let's see if I can start a business doing this. Yes. And I began my business. Now, I didn't go cold turkey like some people do. I decided to transition from being an employee to being a business owner. So I reduced my hours, built up my business, and sort of juggled the two, because I wasn't sure whether it was going to be for me. I wasn't sure whether I was going to be any good at it. I didn't really know. They certainly didn't teach you entrepreneurial business startup skills when I did an MBA many years ago.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's good to be able to dabble and try and have a taste is so important before you jump and you throw all your resources.
Absolutely. Some people don't have that choice. They're maybe redundant, or for whatever reason they've got to jump right in. But, I'm very grateful working in the public service. There is flexibility. You can access all sorts of different policies to allow you to work flexibly. And I just didn't feel ready to make that big leap. I'm glad I did it the way that I did, because there was no pressure. It meant that I still had an income. I could invest in whatever I needed to help me to set up all the things that I didn't know. I needed to learn and find out and set myself up.
So do you feel like you're more confident on path now than you were when you became a midwife, or are they both similar sort of feelings? Like when you were becoming a midwife, you were like, I know this is it. And then now in this career, you're like, I know this is it at the same level, or is this a bit more deeper?
Yeah, I think that when I became a midwife, that feeling was more like a calling.
Yeah.
This feels like a purpose.
Okay. Awesome.
And I think that not only, there's a long period of time passed, so obviously age and wisdom and different life stage and different outlook on life, and that, facing mortality and realising that life is short and life is precious and we need to make the most of every day. But I didn't choose this detour. This was something that was thrown at me, and this is what I decided to pull out of it. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't miss my previous career. I wouldn't have chosen to walk away from it, I don't think. But I love what I'm doing now. And there are sort of subtle but real similarities in what I'm doing. And a few years ago, I think it was about 4 years ago, one of my wonderful clients, Venkat, who lives in India now, he introduced me to the front of the room when I was doing some guest speaking, and he'd found out what I did in my previous career, and he introduced me to the group as the story midwife.
I love it.
And it's kind of stuck because I do bring new life into the world.
Yeah.
But I bring stories into the world,
Yep.
and I empower others to step up and share their messages. So, that's unique to me. I don't know of any other people that are business storytellers that started off life as a midwife. So I'm very grateful doing what I do now. Couldn't imagine doing anything else, but it's more of I'm more purpose driven these days than I was before, and that could be life experience, or it could be this transformation that took place.
Yep, and I guess a lot of things are falling in place for you, where that calling was kind of you going, taking the step, where, like you said, now people are falling into place. You're being introduced and someone uses a line, and that's like, okay, I can combine that into who I am and I guess my branding, but also kind of this, when the synergy starts to happen, then it's like a real purpose. You know that you're supposed to be out there, delivering that. I guess I want to know some of the specifics of how being a midwife has helped you in your business and creating your business. So I believe that you'd be incredibly intuitive through the challenges, not only as a nurse, but also through the hearing challenges. You would have had to, how should I say, understand life and receive information in a whole different way. Like when you're going through that long time of working out and the difference. Okay, what is this? That's a male's voice. That's a female's voice. You really would have had to be curious, interested, and I think your intuition would have had to really be built up.
And focus and discipline as well. I mean, the focus that it took, like sort of 10 minutes of learning, and I'd need to have a bit of a nap because it was just so intensive. And, when we're a kid, we learn to walk and we learn to crawl and we learn to ride a bike. And it's only when you have to relearn to do those things when you're older that you think, wow, no wonder toddlers have so many naps. It's because their brains are just working so hard. So your intuition, nurses have an intuitive superpower that we're tuned in. Sometimes we just know stuff and it's in our gut, and we learn when to act on that and when to just let that sit. Nurses are very good at observing people. Technology is, there's lots of technology out there. There's lots of diagnostic sort of tools and things that we can use. But at the end of the day, it's our eyes and it's our ears and it's our sense of smell and that touch when we know what the priorities are.
Yes.
And, when you think about nurses that work in triage or any type of nurse, we're constantly working out priorities, what needs to be done next, who needs most attention, and also how we can get the best out of people. So getting the best out of people when they're, tired and grumpy and sick and don't want to be there and are fearful and don't know what's going to happen. Those skills are also good for coaching as well. Yeah. So definitely intuition. I'm flexible and adaptable. I'm also very firm. So there's nothing harder in life than having a baby and becoming a new parent, and it's a whole different time and stage in life. And mums and parents put their life in your hands to be able to sort of teach and educate them. So I find now that I'm able to attract the right type of client who wants to work with me. So sometimes people will find out that I've got a health background, or they kind of have a conversation. And coaching is a very personal thing. I think if you're looking for a coach, you're not going to be distracted by the shiny website or the testimony. You really got to have a conversation and go, are we a fit? And sometimes that might be a discussion around, are our values aligned, or what is it that you want to achieve? And am I definitely the right person who can help you do that? And that's trial and error. In the early days of business, I was more broad in my approach, and I would try and help pretty much everyone. But over the years, I'm now 7 years in business, I know exactly who my ideal clients are, who I'm best able to help. And I say no to a lot of things now.
Yeah, isn't that liberating?
It's liberating, but it's also necessary as well, because in order to show up and be my best self, I can only have 6 executive coaching clients at a time. I can only do so many days of workshops and trainings.
Yes. I've noticed it in my own business that screening process is so important.
Yeah.
Because one bad connection, or one, client who maybe is just incredibly problematic and believes they want help, whether it's with their photographs, whether it's with whatever it is, but they don't really want it and they're just going to take you for a ride, that can suck and bleed a business dry.
Yeah.
That sort of a screening process. I love the idea of having a conversation first and being able to speak. And you're right, that personal touch, because you can see, okay, this is award winning, this is, has got these many, trophies as this coach, but you really need that connection, because I'm going to go through a lot with you, and I'm going to open up with you.
You're going to share your thoughts, your fears, your all sorts of challenges, and it definitely has to be a fit.
I wonder if we will start a trend for midwife coaches, because I can see the balance of being a midwife and how important that is, and also being a coach, because it really is that kind of management, that care, that consideration, and then that firmness when the times when you need to launch,
Yeah. No, I think that there are plenty of nurses and midwives who've moved into a coaching role, but there's only one story midwife, Carl.
Yes, exactly. That's right. And we've got it here, folks, on the channel today. I hope you're enjoying it. So I'd love to move on to a couple more questions that I have. I usually finish up with a few specific questions. However, you touched on kind of that transition, and, I look at it as maybe death and rebirth. Like sometimes your old self has to die off, or maybe the limiting beliefs of yourself has to die off through experiences. And there is that transition that we all seem to have in life, where like that was the low of the low moment.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of shift, that kind of something grows out of that, if an animal carcass dies, and then, greenery grows out of that. So that's my sort of vision of it. But for people out there who maybe are saying, putting things up like, maybe I'm too old, or maybe I've been in this one career too long, or maybe, I don't know how I can turn this career into a teaching career, or maybe my time is gone. I guess, what sort of message would you have to people that feel like they can't do it because of the limitations they put on themselves? Yeah,
well, one thing that we don't have any control over is every year we'll have a birthday and get a little bit older. So age is, it's going to happen, and we've only got a certain amount of time on this earth. So to use age as an excuse or a barrier to not do something is really not helpful at all. And I don't know about you, but I've got people who I've had conversations with, and people that I've known who have stayed in a job that has not fulfilled them, that they know that there's something else, that really they've always wanted to sell fine art, or they've always wanted to have a restaurant or cook for people or travel the country. But what's holding them back is a fear, maybe that fear of failure, but often it is a fear that they haven't got the right skills.
Yeah.
So I guess, for me, and I didn't go cold turkey. I did ease out of my career, but I came to the point where I asked myself, okay, what if I fail? What will be the worst thing that could happen? The worst thing that could happen will be I have to get a job again. That wasn't really the end of the world because I enjoyed parts of my job.
Yes.
Definitely really knowing what your strengths are and what your limitations are, what it is that you're going to need help in, what are you going to need to invest in terms of upskilling, training, coaching, what equipment are you going to need to be able to do the job and run the business. Being okay with asking for help when you need to, and surrounding yourself by like-minded people who are going to support you and be your cheerleaders. And sometimes I found the hard way that when you do go through a big transition and you go through this massive period of growth, that some people are not going to stay with you along the journey, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And initially when I realised that, I was going down this path and other people were on a different path, I would really try and hang on to that relationship or friendship and try and be my old self. And now I realise that growing means outgrowing some things, and that might be relationships. And there's a time to just realise that you had a good friendship or relationship or companionship, whatever it was, and okay, this is now the new me, and we'll now go our separate ways. So that was a big learning lesson as well. But I think going back to the age thing is really, asking yourself, okay, am I content doing this for the rest of my life? What legacy do I want to leave? If I were to die tomorrow, what would people be saying about me? And have I really given it my all? And if you've always wanted to cook or sell fine art, and you die not having given that a go just because of some number, then that's pretty sad, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think there's a connection like that I want to pull from something that you said to me. Speaking to you is serving. Like speaking to you and coaching and training, it's serving. And I'd love to kind of, I guess, dive into that mindset of, the difference between I need to find a profession, need to find a role in humanity, need to find my space or my position where I'm not going to be, I'm going to be socially accepted. And I can keep my friends, I can keep my comforts, I can keep everything. And then the kind of moment where you go, the transition where you go, no, I'm here to serve in some way. So, how did that come about for you?
I think that does come about with age and definitely wisdom. Yeah. There is a time when I felt personally that I've just sort of dropped into a whole new level of self-acceptance. So in my younger years, it was about what impression I'm making, what's the perception of others about me, am I a good friend or am I doing the right thing? Or it was really all my energy was focused outward, whereas now it's accepting that I am who I am and what I am, and as long as I'm showing up and always working on being the best version of myself, that's okay. I'm also okay with I'm not everyone's cup of tea. I can't serve everyone. And so I think it's that combination of definitely confidence, but growing into, your own skin. I think earlier on in life, I was in a skin that probably didn't fit me too well, and I was looking for external validation from various sources, and always wanted to get approval from others, be liked by others, and that's not sustainable. It's not sustainable.
That I definitely get that same feeling of that being in your skin, being in your body, being in your space, and I think that's really where things start to come together, and your heart starts to sing when you're kind of like, and there's times that where you're out of your body and you're out of your synergy of who you are and how you want to show up, and those times can be tormenting because you're going, I'm in this role, I'm delivering this thing, I'm saying these words in the sales job, but I don't believe them, or I'm not with it, and that, I guess that's another motivation to say, well, it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter how long you've been in this career, it doesn't matter how comfortable this situation is, you know, how do you want to feel? Do you want to feel like you're living in your body, you're living in your purpose, or do you want to live someone else's? And I think that's really, it's such a satisfying feeling when you're in your zone, you're in your body. Every move you make, every action you make is your confidence. It's your self-assurity. I think that's something that's really.
And the other
beautiful.
thing that happens when you reach my age of maturity is that you know, time speeds up. I'm sure it does, and you realise that, okay, we really need to take it up a notch now. We need to really make the most of the time that we've got to finish off. I think when we're younger, when I look back on my youth, I wasted a lot of time. You know, sleep in today, and I won't get there, and I drink too much, and be lazy, and I procrastinate. I'll get that done tomorrow. And now I've got a packed agenda. I'm more appreciative that life on earth is short, and I've still got so much that I want to get done, and I feel that I've got more energy and enthusiasm now, I think, because I am deciding my destiny rather than working for the big employer. And you know, working in the public service is so much bureaucracy that it was very hard to cope with that on a daily basis and get that level of fulfillment. Whereas when you're the boss, you know, you make the decisions that are right for the business. You get to choose who you work with. So you're working with people who bring you joy, who inspire you. You're working with people, and then you just get an amazing buzz when they have a celebration or they success. I mean, I love it when my clients send me a photo of them on stage and they're like, hey, like I nailed my keynote and would never have been able to do it without your help, and I'm now confident and I've won some business, and I just love it. And that's the midwife in me, that I've enabled something else to come out into the world. I've unlocked somebody's voice, and now that's going to grow. So that gives me a lot of joy, and while I get the joy, I'll carry on doing what I'm doing. So I don't think there's any big changes coming.
That's beautiful. I love the cheerleader, the kind of, you know, feeling along the way of the same excitement that they're feeling. It's and I can definitely see that, you know, when you've shot me through something or some opportunities or check this thing out there, and I can definitely see, okay, you're serving. This is how you're serving. This is your true passion, because you're wanting to see other people grow and take a hold of opportunities, and you're connecting the dots, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's really when you're living in your purpose. So I guess, you know, that, I mean, you probably answered these questions, but I did want to ask you, you know, what lights the fire in your heart? Like, I think along the way of you helping people, and I will divert to just one quick story. There was this gentleman that I know, and he was a part of this charity organization. It was the same thing where he wanted to do so much in that charity organization, and I was there, you know, doing the home visits, helping him, and he was up the top in terms of the leadership of this big charity organization. But he noticed bullying, and there was a lady who actually wanted to commit suicide, and he went into the office and said, "What the hell is this? We're a charity organization about, you know, breathing life into people, not bullying life out of people, you know." And so that sort of thing, and where he was trying to, you know, give to, like, it would be a family out in the western suburbs of Sydney, and wanted to give a lot more than just a $50 Woolworths voucher to a family of 6 who, you know, the daughter had hit her head due to an explosion back in Afghanistan, and all these different sort of things. So there was a lot that he wanted to do, and his environment, he wasn't able to do it. So he eventually, because he was challenging the status quo, he got pushed out of there. They announced that he was retiring. They gave him a car, and they said, "Oh, by the way, so and so is retiring," and he went, you know, got all these lawyers, went on this legal battle, and he just went, "You know what, I'm spending so much time and energy trying to fight this. I need to go and create my own thing." And then he created his own charity, and he would literally see a homeless person on the street and pick them up, put them in a night somewhere. He would see how he could get them a job. So really incredible, you know, vision of what he was doing, but he was really finding out that he couldn't do it in the confinements. He had to find a way to serve with his own skills and create something. So I guess, you know, what is it that lights that fire in your heart? Is it that seeing, you know, the people that you're adding value to kind of win and create their own sort of, life. Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's a really good, you've nailed it. That's a really good feeling to be able to use my skills to help people step up and be more confident, be their authentic self, go out there and share their messages with people, because we've all got stories worth sharing. Yeah. But often people don't think that they have. They go, oh, look, my life's ordinary, or who wants to hear about my story? And so that gives me a lot of joy. But the other thing that lights me up on a personal level will be my 3 beautiful girls. So they're adults now. My youngest is 23, my eldest is in her late 20s, and they are just 3 awesome human beings. Yeah. And when I look at them as strong, independent women and what they're doing and what their values are and how they give back to the community, it really makes me feel very proud. So the fact that I've done the parenting thing and have come out the other end, and the girls have survived and they're thriving, and they're making a difference in the world. One's very creative, one's all about earth and the environment and whatever she can do, and one is a nurse. One took after me. Wow. It's a second career. She did her first career as a hairdresser, and now one day she came to me and she said, Mum, I think I want to be a nurse. And wow. That really gives me a lot of joy. Definitely.
It's inspiring. So I guess when you've got young kids, they're taking different paths, and they're coming to you with questions and where do I go down this way if I become a nurse, and those sorts of things. I guess my next question that I'd love to finish with, or second last question, would be, what does deciding your destiny mean to you? What would deciding your destiny mean to I guess you, and how you would relay that to someone like your daughter?
For me, it's all about choices. Yeah. It's about being willing to make the hard choices, about really coming up with what options are available and making it happen. There are people in the world who complain about their situation and what they've got or what they haven't got, and they have got this sense of entitlement or expectation that other people are going to fix it or come along with the magic solution. But we get to decide each day. We get to decide what attitude we're going to wear, what behaviour we are going to demonstrate or use, how kind we are to others. And it's knowing that we do have a choice. We always have simple choices within, and sometimes we don't make the right choice. Hopefully we do more often than not, but it is a learning journey. So just remembering that we get to choose. Always we get to choose. Don't sit around waiting for other people to make it happen. Make it happen yourself.
I love that. That's inspiring. That's got me excited about the day, the rest of the coming days. So thank you so much. So where could the audience find you? I think I would love my audience to be able to, I guess, devour more of your content.
Yeah. My website is speakingsavvy.com.au. I've got a podcast called Business Chat with Lisa Evans on all the podcast platforms. I'm on LinkedIn. I write every day on LinkedIn, which is where we actually met, Kyle. I love LinkedIn. And I'm happy to give anyone a 30-minute clarity coffee call if somebody wants help to craft their story or build their confidence in speaking. So you can access that through jumping on the website.
Guys, jump on that clarity session, that clarity call. I know it's a world where so many things are shifting and changing, and I think finding clarity in what you're doing and your purpose is it's really, really important. So jump on that. Again, thank you so much, Lisa, for coming on. I really appreciate that. I know my audience is going to love our conversation, and you've inspired me. So tick there, and thank you. And we're definitely going to be creating things down in the future. So or up into the future, I should say. I'm very excited for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Kyle.